Hi, friends. No burp this week.
Yay. Yay.
I released all the demons on that one.
Yeah.
Hey, at least it was a burp this time and not like last time we recorded and I had the farts.
Fair point. Fair point.
Also, I was sick the last time and I'm fairly certain, you and I already had this discussion, but I'm fairly certain that I had COVID.
I didn't get sick, so
Well, I tested negative.
I'm not mad about it.
I tested negative, but I did lose smell and taste after recording that night. It was, and so did TJ.
You trying to get me sick.
I was not.
You trying to take me out.
I tried to talk you into not recording that night.
I don't know. Well, we got it done.
I felt like death, but we got it done. Anyways, so,
Spooky Illinois.
yeah, this month's installment of the Spooky States. We've made it to the eyes.
I was pretty excited.
Oh, we were already in the eyes.
The eyes. Yeah, we did
Idaho.
last week. Or last month. Yeah, so we've got Illinois.
Okay, so we're gonna jump right into it. The first story is Anna Bixby's Cave. Anna Pierce was born in Lincoln County, Tennessee in 1802. She eventually moved to Philadelphia to train as a midwife and dentist. That's a interesting combination. Eventually working in two ends of the spectrum there.
Yeah. Two different holes.
Two separate lips. Like and then she eventually moved to Illinois. Here she was considered to be a well-traveled woman who had learned a lot about herbs from her travels. She was the only physician in the area of Hardin County, and she became well known as a talented frontier doctor, scientist, dentist, midwife, and herbalist. During this time, women like Anna were referred to as healers. In 1818, Abraham Lincoln's mother fell ill and passed away. Many believe that the illness was a result of drinking tainted milk. Over a few years, many families and young nursing cattle died due to the mysterious milk sickness. Rumors began to spread that a witch was spreading evil magic to cause the deaths, but Anna remained a voice of reason in the panic when she arrived to Illinois in 1832 and warned the families not to drink the milk as it could be something bad the cattle was eating to cause this illness. Many sources claimed that she had lost loved ones herself to this milk sickness, including her mother and sister-in-law. She had also lost her first husband and childhood friend, Isaac Hobbs, to the pneumonia epidemic. Anna noted that the milk sickness seemed to be seasonal, and she obsessed over the cause for the entire winter as she was worried for the tainted milk that was sure to come in the spring. She followed cattle, horses, and goats and would take diligent notes on what plants they ate and what plants they did not eat. She even took notice of the goats being pickier eaters than the cows. The following spring, Anna was out walking when she met a Native American medicine woman who was known in the area as Aunt Shawnee. Anna showed her a white flowering plant that was growing nearby called snakeroot. Based on her notes, Anna was suspicious of the plant. We now know that white snakeroot is a member of the daisy family, and Native Americans would use its roots to make a poultice for the treatment of snake bites. The roots could also be brewed into a tea to treat a fever, diarrhea, and kidney stones. Today, it is commonly used in bone set mojo bags in hoodoo magic to ward off jinxing illnesses. Its properties include luck and money. Aunt Shawnee confirmed for Anna that the plant was poisonous to cattle and that the milk illness had also stricken her Shawnee people in the past. Anna knew she could trust the woman, but wanted to be totally sure And so she took a small piece of the plant and fed it to a young cow who did become ill. Immediately, the people in the area went to work to find and destroy the snake root growing in the woodlands where the cows would graze. The milk once again became safe to drink, and the illness was essentially eradicated for the time being. In 1845, Anna was in her 40s and had remarried to an Irishman named Eason Bigsby. It was clear that he had only married Anna for her wealth, and rumor was that Anna had money buried in a cave near her family property. Her husband turned out to be a crook and was selling bootlegged whiskey that had been distilled in a cave down on the Ohio River with his accomplices. When she had enough of him, Anna attempted to separate from Eason, and he drank himself into a stupor and came up with the malicious plan. On a stormy night, someone was at Anna's door begging her to come up the road to care for his sick wife. This had happened to Anna many times, and so she quickly left her home with the stranger, but then the person turned on her, and she realized it was her estranged husband, Eason. He bound her hands in rope and led her to the cave, where he demanded that she dig up her buried money. We know that Anna managed to escape, and when she made a run for it, into the rainy darkness, she either slipped off a cliff by mistake, or Eason had followed her and out of anger shoved her off the cliff to be rid of her. She had several broken bones, but fortunately for her, some tree limbs broke her 60-foot fall. In some versions of the legend, Eason set the woods on fire to try and burn her out of the trees, but a heavy rainstorm put the flames out, and the white spirits guided her to safety. But bruised and bleeding, Anna limped to a neighbor's home who was able to help her. The Illinois police did arrest Eason, but he escaped. He was recaptured in Missouri, but escaped again. After this escape, the trail went cold. Anna died in 1969 at the age of 67. She was buried at Barnard Cat Cemetery in Rock Creek, Illinois. It wasn't until 1928 that it was officially published that snake root was the cause of the milk sickness epidemic. Today, there have been reports of a strange light on the property where Anna used to live. The light hovers and swings as though it were a lantern guiding visitors at night to the cave on the property. This is the same cave that is said to hold Anna's buried money. Is it possible that she remains there today to guard her treasure? The great-granddaughter of Anna, who lives on the property, was asked to comment on the ghostly light, and in the interview she confirms that she has seen the light many times at night, and it will always disappear at the mouth of the cave. She said, "I would go look for it if I thought great-great-granny wanted me to have it." That's sweet, though.
That is sweet. The Peoria State Hospital operated from 1902 to 1973 in Bartonville, and it began its life as the Illinois Asylum for the Incurably Insane. The first superintendent, Dr. George A. Zeller, went before state legislature to have the name changed due to his strong belief that no patient was incurable. In 1907, the name was changed to Peoria State Hospital since Peoria was the closest large town at that time. It was completed under the direction of Dr. Zeller as a cottage system plan of 63 buildings, and among those were patient/caretaker housing, a store, and the Pollock Hospital building. The Pollock Hospital was added to the state hospital campus in 1949. By 1906, tuberculosis was the leading cause of death at the Peoria State Hospital, but the Pollock Hospital building was built specifically to care for tuberculosis patients. Tuberculosis. The northern wing was for female patients, and the southern wing was for male patients, and the building was named in honor of Dr. M. Pollock, who carried out much exhaustive research at the asylum in 1937.
Get your shit together.
By 1973, the Pollock Hospital was one of the last buildings on the grounds of the asylum that were still in use. During the hospital's years of operation, hundreds of patients passed away, and according to eyewitness accounts, some of their spirits seemed to have stayed behind to walk the hallways for eternity. Today, there are only 12 of the original buildings remaining, and they are all in good condition and occupied. The Pollock Hospital is now a haunted house attraction. There are 4 cemeteries. There are also 4 cemeteries on the grounds where thousands have been laid to rest. Some of the more notable graves include former grave digger Mr. Bookbinder, Rhoda Derry, who became famous because of the cruel treatment she suffered before arriving to this institution, and Emily Belcher, who was the last surviving descendant of the explorer Sir Francis Drake. And I've got a photo in here of the Bowen building, which was torn down in 2017. Some of the experiences that have been reported at the Pollock Hospital include in the cafeteria area where sounds of whispering and crying and female voices have been heard. It is possible that the female patients would have been crying because it was required that all of their hair be cut off when they were admitted to the asylum due to the belief that TB could be passed around from patients' body hair. In the female death ward, there has been the apparition of a 95-year-old woman who has been nicknamed the Dirty Girl because she has been known to grab the privates of male investigators in the past. She was said to strip naked and run through the hospital as well.
You dirty girl.
Yeah. The X-ray room is also said to be very active, and there have been EVPs captured of giggling and talking. There have also been reports of doors slamming on their own, singing, shadow figures, full-bodied apparitions, and the sound of heavy boots walking in the men's death ward. The basement is also said to be the most haunted area of the Pollock Hospital, but the source was from a group of investigators, and they were not allowed to go down there at that time due to safety concerns. Each member of the team wrote up their experiences, so I'll share just a couple of those. So Stan Suho said, "This was our first investigation of the old hospital. We arrived after which we took our equipment inside and were met by our hostess for the evening. She conducted us on our walk through and pointed out all the active places, which I tapped. Thus began our first paranormal experiences. While seated," and he posed that like a question, while seated in a small meeting room listening to her lecture, a small, like a sock puppet appeared over her shoulder. As I was busy tapping her, I did not notice it. However, our ever-alert Kathy picked up on it and stopped the music. It only appeared for about a few seconds, then disappeared back into the darkness. After some discussion, we proceeded with the tour. And then he goes on to say more on the aforementioned apparition. The group seemed to be divided on the authenticity of it. After reviewing it many times, I remained skeptical. I would hate to think this was staged, but it was just too artificial. I can see Vincent Price pulling the strings. Others not sure. Nothing to report from my experiments. Without all the shenanigans, this is still an interesting place. Maybe next time our cameras should be focused on the live spirits instead of the dead ones. And then Marge Suka. Near the end of the presentation, off to the side of the room, several investigators noticed what looked like a piece of white sheet float up in the air and drop down. Upon investigating the area closer, nothing unusual was found. Dale and Stan were recording the presentation. They both got this on film. Going over this, we realized this white sheet was actually up in the air for approximately 5 to 10 minutes before it dropped down. Or no, 5 to 10 seconds. We were able to determine what it was. However, I personally don't believe this was paranormal. And then she did go on to say that in the x-ray room, Mike felt like someone was next to him. Kat, Kathy, and Mike heard something that sounded like a mechanical gust of air come from the doorway. We were unable to duplicate this or debunk it. I did pick it up on my recorder. I'm wondering if we didn't pick up a residual sound from an old x-ray machine. I think I'm going to skip this lady. But Mike he was skeptical of the entire visit because it was set up for the haunted house attraction, and any of the things that the others noted, he said he wasn't sure if it was a prop or not because there were so many around. He said the building has a long history of activity, and I've been there in the past and have had some unique experiences, but sadly it is now like a commercial ghost house. This is my own personal view of the building and the investigation. The others basically just repeated the same story about the white sheet, no one knowing if it was faked or not, but it kind of seems like it might have been faked. So,
wow.
It seemed like that their whole investigation was just kind of set up.
Right.
And
that sucks.
Yeah.
Okay, so as with most urban legends, there are multiple versions of the story, and the Chesterfield witch's grave is no different, but the short version is that there was a lady who, for whatever reason, was accused of witchcraft and then executed due to the fear that was generated by the accusation. In the first version, around the year 1900, there was an elderly woman who admitted to her Amish community that she was a witch and had been communing with the devil. A week later, she was found murdered in a farm field nearby, but the community was so relieved that she was dead that they never bothered to investigate her murder. In another version of this legend, it was sometime in the mid-1800s, and a woman who had openly disputed the teachings of her Amish faith. Some of the overzealous members of her community were offended by her proclamations and accused her of being a witch. This resulted in members of her community shunning her, and eventually enough people believed that she was a witch that she was convicted and sentenced to hang. In yet another version, there's a lady who lived in the mid-1800s who was a well-known healer, and she also had an incredible knowledge of local flora. The woman would make remedies for her patients and from the plants and other items that she gathered from the forest. After a prominent member of the community died under mysterious circumstances, the healer was accused of murder and of being a witch. Her accusers claimed that she had killed the man by either casting an evil spell by brewing up a deadly concoction. She was tried for witchcraft, found guilty, and put to death for her crimes. According to the rest of the legend, the accused witch is buried in the Chesterville Cemetery, and that a tree was planted on top of her grave. It was believed that by planting a tree on top of a person's grave, that the roots will trap their soul. As long as the tree is alive, she will be bound to her grave. Unfortunately, the headstone is missing, so the name and date of death for the supposed accused witch is not known. The grave was cared for enough that someone placed a wrought iron fence around it. Some still believe in the legend of the Chesterfield witch because of the saw marks that are visible in the tree. The Roadside America website claims that the witch was a teenage girl, about 15 years of age, who challenged her Amish upbringing and questioned the treatment of women, and so she was deemed a witch. It was also claimed that a few years ago, someone girdled the tree in an attempt to slowly kill it, and that's what the cut lines are from.
Yeah, I think like girdled it is like they tied like something very tight.
Right. Trying to basically squeeze it to death.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a method of killing trees without felling them. And they sever the bark and sometimes the sapwood in a ring extending entirely around the trunk of the tree. If this ring is wide enough and deep enough, it will keep the cambium layer from growing back together. So it'll like make cuts, basically. Let me get my document back open. The Elgin Casket Factory was originally built in 1903 by Charles W. Glover and his associates A.C. Todson and W.C. Todson. The now abandoned factory is over 55,000 square feet. Glover later acquired all of the stock in the company and conducted business there until his death in 1912. Following the death of his wife, Mrs. Mabel Glover, who operated the business until 1922, the company was then acquired by Fred J. Koss, E. Bruce Stewart, and Wesley F. Leland. Elgin Silver Plate Company was acquired in 1926 by a competitor, Western Casket Hardware, and operations were consolidated in the plant. About 2 years later, Western began to manufacture metal caskets, and these began to dominate the output of the company, and the name was changed to Elgin Metal Casket Company in 1939. Elgin produced quality caskets, and in peak years would ship up to 70,000 throughout the country. Former President Calvin Coolidge is buried in one, and the body of John F. Kennedy was transported from Dallas to Washington, D.C., in an Elgin casket after he was assassinated in 1963. This casket was very, very heavy, and it was dropped getting it off of the Air Force One. This was primarily due to the lack of a funeral director being allowed, because they put him on the plane on Air Force One, and then they left. Funeral director on the tarmac.
Oh.
Ask a Mortician did a very in-depth video on the Kennedy assassination. It's very, very interesting. But bodies that were prepared by Elgin undertakers were often interred in Elgin-made caskets. The company was sold again in 1968 to Simmons, and then to Gulf and Western in 1979, and eventually the business was moved to Indiana in 1982. The company had a serious cyanide spill in 1977, which resulted in a huge fine, which really seemed to be the beginning of the end for Elgin Metal Caskets. The building was abandoned in 1980, and as far as I can tell, it was empty until 2009, when it was rented out as a haunted house attraction, which ran until the Halloween season of 2023. Somebody's digging in the litter box. It is believed that the building was built on top of an old settlers cemetery, and that many of the graves were moved to nearby Bluff City Cemetery. However, there has been no evidence to substantiate this claim, and the Elgin Historical Society has no evidence of the cemetery existing. In 1949, there were 2 escapees from a local mental hospital who were reported to be seen on the property. However, the 2 were never seen again after this. There was also a lawsuit and settlement on August 19, 1977, against the factory for using inexpensive caskets that weren't as airtight as they were advertised. And in the complaint, the affected family contended that the casket used for their son and brother, Clayton Hurst, was warranted to be airtight. However, when the body was disinterred for a second autopsy, the casket was full of water. 5 separate plaintiffs were awarded a total of $34,000 in damages. Get out of here. As far as hauntings go, there have been a lot of paranormal experiences that are said to occur, including cold spots and shadow people. In the early 1980s, the casket company had closed. There were cloaked figures spotted around the property. It is believed that they may have been psychics, or it was used by cult members to practice their dark religious ceremonies. But in the 1980s, it was like the height of the satanic panic. So, how many times are you going to tell me that email came in? In the casket room, some of the actors of the former haunted house attraction have claimed to hear whispering in their ears. It was reported that while filming a promo video in 2013, the camera fell off of the tripod and then would not work again. It wasn't because the camera fell. However, when inspected, the inside of the camera was fried. In the wait line area, there have been several psychics to report, allegedly without knowing the history, that there was a portal there. The spirit of a young boy named Jacob, who is about 12 years old, has been encountered in this spot, and some believe that it isn't actually a child's spirit, but something else pretending to be a child.
That's the worst.
Yeah. There have been several visitors and one tour guide to experience sudden nosebleeds in this area. And during one spirit box session, a question was asked of how someone died, and the response was cocaine, which would explain the nosebleeds.
That's crazy.
In the hallway, there is said to be a mimic ghost who will take the form of someone you know. There have also been reports that just past the white door in the hallway, people have felt someone run past them and will actually feel the footsteps on the floor. In another hallway with a wheelchair in it, which is located in the basement, there are 3 rooms that seem to attract people. And when they reach the room, it feels as though they are being pushed out of the area. The third room is the doctor's room, and there is a heavy feeling often reported in this room. In this same hallway, people have reported hearing voices and a door slamming very loudly. There is reported to be someone or something attached to the wheelchair. During a previous investigation by the Ghost Research Society, the building's remote camera was going in and out of focus, and when checked, everything was fine, and they proceeded to the basement. Upon opening the door to the hallway, there was a dust cloud as though someone had just stirred up the dust on the floor, and the wheelchair was found on its side with the wheels still spinning.
Gross.
The group also recorded some scratching sounds on the walls, and some group members reported being touched, as well as the sensation of their flashlights being pulled out of their hands. In the picture room with the pews, there were some photos taken in the past that seemed to show strange faces in the empty hallway that lead into the room, and some have been seen on some of the pillars. So some faces have been seen on the pillars. Within the confessional room, there is a heaviness reported. And in this room, there were said to be many murders and rapes that occurred, but that claim has never been substantiated. There has also been a pig-faced apparition seen, and there seems to be something there that reacts more towards women than it does men. And employees have seen the curtain in this room move all by itself, and there has been a mannequin to fall over on its own.
Nope. Mm-mm. See, but what's crazy is like when you read that part that talked about whenever they opened the door and it was like the dust had been kicked up and the wheelchair was on its side with the wheel still spinning.
Yeah.
The normal person's response to that is, I'm out.
Yeah.
My immediate response was, what did that? Let's go see.
Yeah. See me? I'll probably leave. Be like, okay, bye.
I'd be like, something's telling me to go, but we should probably check this out. However, if I see a pig face, I'm out.
Yeah, no.
I'm done.
I don't want to see a pig face.
I'm done. Okay. Now inactive, Bachelor's Grove Cemetery is one of the oldest cemeteries in South Cook County, Illinois. It's about 1 acre of land located across from the Rubio Woods Forest Preserve on 143rd Street. It is down a trail that was originally a section of the old Midlothian Turnpike that has been closed to vehicle traffic since the 1960s. According to a manuscript by Ferdinand Schapper, written in 1917, the first burial in the Everton Cemetery at Bachelor's Grove was that of Eliza Scott in November 1844. However, the newspaper noted that an even earlier burial in an article entitled Pioneers in Peaceful Rest, Bachelor's Grove, one of the first cemeteries, lies serene, undisturbed, which was published in August of 1935 and said that William B. Nobles was the first and he died in 1938. The last...
I think that's supposed to say 1838.
I was like, wait a minute. The last burial to take place at Bachelor's Grove was that of Laura M. McGee in 1965, followed by Robert E. Shields in 1989, who was cremated and buried in the family plot. Prior to the closing of the Midlothian Turnpike, the cemetery was becoming a lover's lane for young couples and would provide a secluded spot for teenagers to have parties with alcohol involved. Once the turnpike permanently closed, it became even more isolated, and the vandalism at the cemetery increased drastically. There was evidence of satanic rituals from time to time. It was found that some graves were dug up and others were robbed. This activity was at its peak during the 1960s and 1970s. During the 1970s, the vandalism was at an all-time high, and many stones were broken, defaced, spray-painted, and even stolen. It is believed that many of the stolen stones ended up being thrown into the quarry pond nearby. In an article, Clarence Fulton said that the grave markers were found in Maywood Evergreen Park and even in the Chicago Police Headquarters, but it is unknown whatever happened to the recovered markers. If they were returned to the cemetery, it would have been very likely that they would have just been stolen again. Over the years, there have been numerous reports of hauntings at Bachelor's Grove, beginning as far back as the 1950s. The Madonna of Bachelor's Grove, also known as the Woman in White or White Lady,
because it wouldn't be a good ghost story without a woman in white.
Right. First appeared in a photograph that was taken in 1979 by a group of paranormal investigators. They described her as wearing a hooded robe and carrying a baby in her arms. Later, she was seen only wearing a white dress and would often wander about the graveyard without a baby. Local legend says that she is looking for something, but it's never been specified as to who or what. There's an infrared photograph from 1991 that shows her sitting on a headstone at the north side of the cemetery, and she appears to be gazing out at the fence line and the trees. This photo was taken by the Oak Lawn Ghost Research Society. Some people say the photo was a hoax, but others believe it was a photo of the Madonna. There is also a phantom farmhouse. It is a one-story white Victorian-style home that has a porch swing and a picket fence around it. The house typically appears with a yellow-orange glow from the windows that flickers as though it is illuminated by candlelight. Many report that the house simply shrinks away and will eventually disappear entirely when it is approached. But legend says that if you are able to enter the home, you are never able to leave it. There are records that show several homes that stood on or near the grounds of the cemetery, but none that resembled the disappearing house. It is still spotted today, and sometimes a strange mist is seen around it as it fades in or out of view.
I just sent you the photo on Teams.
Oh, that's crazy looking.
Yeah. I mean, it's understandable why people think it's a hoax.
Yeah. There is a story that in 1870, a farmer was plowing a field nearby and his horse became startled, and the farmer, being caught off guard, became tangled in the reins and was dragged as the horse ran into a pond nearby, and they both drowned. Their apparitions have been seen on the surface of the pond that is beside the cemetery. They have also been seen on 143rd Street, just beyond the pond. There is also a spirit of a large black and tan dog that's been spotted sitting quietly at the cemetery entrance. It's also been seen running down the path where it inevitably fades into thin air. Listen, I'm telling you right now, it is my goal in life to see a friendly ghost dog. Because I am, of course, going to try and love it.
Right.
I'd be like, you can attach yourself to me. You can come home with me. That's fine. One of the more famous encounters are the balls of blue or red light that have been spotted at various parts of the cemetery, and they will hover and dance around. Some have said that they seem to make intelligent movements back and forth.
I don't know that I would be real thrilled with seeing little balls of red and blue light.
We've seen this.
We've
seen red ones.
Yeah. I don't particularly care for it.
Did I tell you, side note, did I tell you that I took a friend of mine? I was telling her about that one cemetery with the little girl on the bench.
Mm-hmm.
And she was like, oh, I've passed by there before. And I was like, girl, you know that place is haunted like crazy? She said, no, really? And I was like, yeah, girl, it's in like books.
Yeah.
And then like, I was telling her about the Mother Teresa or whatever statue.
Yeah.
And so we drove by there. She didn't see it. She didn't see the movement. She did not see that it had turned its head. Twice. She said, even after that, she said, I drove by there and I didn't see it later, like the next day or something. And I was like, do you mean? What do you mean? It moved.
Creepy.
Every time it moves.
That place is so creepy.
It makes my innards hurt.
The Showman's League of America was founded in 1913 with Buffalo Bill Cody as its first president. It was founded with the mission of assisting carnival and circus performers through the good times and the bad, and made it their goal to see to their needs while on the road. It was revolutionary for the time because of the quality of life for carnival workers on trains was not exactly ideal. The organization chose the elephant as its symbol to illustrate the strength of the performers. The league is still in operation today, 112 years later. In 1917, the League acquired a large plot of land in Woodlawn Cemetery just outside of Chicago with no real plans to use it anytime soon. That was until the members of the popular Hagenbeck Wallace Circus were sleeping soundly on their train during the early morning hours of June 22nd, 1918. Typically, the performers would sleep at the back of the train. At around 4 a.m., there was another train following behind the circus train at a pace of 35 miles per hour, without heeding any of the warnings along the way. The train didn't even slow down because the conductor had fallen asleep. Inevitably, the crash that came slammed into the rear cars with such force that the sleeping performers were allegedly killed instantly, and the wreck is one of the worst train wrecks in U.S. history. I've got a photo of it, too. The exact death toll has been lost to history, but it is estimated that 86 people lost their lives that night and 127 suffered serious injuries. Their survivors crawled from the train, and the lanterns that were lit inside the wooden train cars lit the train car on fire, and performers had no other option but to watch their friends succumb to the fire. Clown Joe Coyle, survivor, remembered desperately trying to save his wife and daughter from the blaze, but was pulled back by his fellow performers, and he sobbed as he watched them succumb to the flames. Mm-hmm. The Showmen's League of America immediately began working to prepare for the funerals and services for the many performers, trapeze artists, strongmen, and clowns. They used the newly purchased plot at Woodlawn Cemetery, and services were conducted over the course of 5 days following the incident. The performers were buried in a mass grave, some who did not give their true identities when they joined the circus, and were therefore buried under their nicknames, and others whose bodies were unidentifiable were buried as unknown male/female. There were monuments erected, including the famous elephant, and they were interred at Showman's Rest. And I've got a photo of the mass grave and then of that elephant memorial statue. Today, the League holds services at Showman's Rest every Memorial Day to honor those who lost their lives that day in 1918. Since then, other performers have been laid to rest there, and it is seen as a very high honor. There are reports of this area of Woodlawn Cemetery being haunted and the high energy of the circus being felt. There have been many EVPs recorded of unusual sounds. Visitors have reported hearing elephants in the distance, even though there are no elephants even buried at the cemetery. Some have also claimed to feel the vibrations of elephants walking around the perimeter of the plot at night, as though the statues have come to life to guard the performers that rest there. There have also been voices reported, as well as a raucous laughter, vibrant circus music, and the sound of an unseen audience applauding. Be creepy.
Yeah. Hold on, because I'm looking for something related to cat speaking.
Little cat. That is the nastiest sound.
That's what you get for being a hateful wench earlier.
Look at her scurrying off. Like she didn't do something nasty. Listen at her going again. That's why we can't have nothing nice.
I hope the mics picked that up. They probably didn't.
I hope it didn't. It's disgusting. It's bad enough that I heard it.
All right, so the next one I had to search because the name sounded familiar, but it's unrelated. It was in our Delaware episode. But anyway, the Stickney Mansion is listed on the National Register of Historic Places and has an unconventional style that many believe was done due to George Stickney's belief in spiritualism. Built in 1836, both George and his wife Sylvia, so that the Stickney stuck out because in the Bowers Harbor Inn in Delaware, but it was Jenny or Genevieve and her husband Charles F. Stickney.
No.
But anyway, Built in 1836, both George and his wife Sylvia were staunch believers in spiritualism, and this meant that they thought that spirits could and wanted to speak with them and through them. The Stickneys built their dream home in the wilderness of Illinois so that they would be far from prying eyes. They built the mansion with 2 stories. The living and the domestic quarters were on the first floor, and the second floor was made up entirely of a grand ballroom. The building was done to be sure that there were no sharp corners. Every angle was rounded. The thought behind this was that it would allow the spirits to travel through the home unhindered, as it has been thought that corners hid ghosts, or in Christian beliefs, the devil himself. The Stickneys would hold lavish seances in the grand ballroom and invite guests from all over to come and commune with the dead. The couple's fixation on speaking with spirits was said to stem from the tragic deaths of many of their children. Only 3 out of their 10 children survived to adulthood. Ever since the Stickneys left the home, there have been a number of supernatural tales to spring up around the mansion, but the most prevalent one involves the death of Mr. Stickney himself. The legend says that George Stickney was found slumped in a corner of his home that had accidentally been built at a 90-degree angle, and that he had a look of horror frozen on his face. After the death of George, Sylvia continued to live in the house and made a name for herself as a spirit medium. She had the upstairs ballroom converted into a large seance chamber, and people would come far and wide to contact the spirits of their deceased loved ones.
What did I have on my brain? Far and wide.
Sylvia also claimed that she was still in contact with her deceased husband and children. Since that time, there have been numerous stories from various tenants, including the police, that work there now as it has become the Bull Valley Police Department. The police say that the portion of the home that is restored and houses their police department is not haunted, nor has it ever been haunted.
Yeah, that's kind of a bum,
right?
But is this the last one?
Yes, that's what I was just looking at.
So Ashmore Estates was originally built as a poor farm near Loxa, Illinois, and beginning in 1857, the building was home to the poor, disabled, and mentally ill patients, or inmates, as they were called.
That hurts my feelings.
That's why I put it in quotations. There is a cemetery on the property that was for any patients who died there. However, its location is not known. There is a small cemetery that was started later in the property's history that is maintained by the county. In 1870, the property was purchased by Coles County, and the residents were moved to a newly constructed timer and brick building, timber, I think. I forgot a letter. Which was about the size of a modern single, because I looked at it and I was like, no, that had to have been right.
This was written today, yes.
This was written today.
Okay, so you were in a hurry.
Yeah. But which was about the size of a modern single-family home. During its time as a place for the disabled and mentally ill, about 250 inmates passed through the farm, and in the first 9 years, 32 of them died. The newer pauper cemetery holds about 60 to 100 people, but their names are not known. By 1902, the conditions on the farm had severely deteriorated, and the Board of State Commissioners of Public Charities reported that the mentally ill were not provided any special care and were free to roam the facility and the grounds. By 1911, the house had been condemned because of the vermin-infected walls, rough floors, small windows, and the poor ventilation system, and there were swarms of flies that contaminated the food. But it took until 1915 for the state to consider bids to replace the building. In 1916, the construction on the new building began, and in February, and then later on down the line, in February of 1959, the property was sold again to Ashmore Estates Incorporated, who had planned to operate a private psychiatric hospital. However, the project failed after 5 years, and the hospital was closed in 1964 due to their high debts. The hospital was reorganized and reopened in 1965 and began accepting patients from state mental facilities. Records indicate that 49 residents lived on the property in 1968. In the 1970s and 80s, there were other attempts to renovate, and eventually in 1986, the psychiatric facility was closed, and then the property became the target of vandals. It was sold again in 1998, and the facility was going to be converted into a private home. However, due to the continued vandalism, the project fell through, and it was sold again in 2006. And the new owner, Scott Kelly, moved into the home and began to renovate it, and he hoped that his presence on the property would discourage vandals, and he also began to conduct flashlight tours of the interior in an effort to raise funds for the renovation. And the property operated as a haunted attraction for some years, and during the off-season, Kelly would offer overnight stays in the building. In January of 2013, a storm with winds of up to 100 miles per hour tore off the new roof and destroyed other structures on the property. The Kelly family was safe, but the damage was devastating. They sold the property in May 2014 to the current owners who invested the time, energy, and love needed to clean up and improve the conditions of the property, and now have created a popular location for paranormal investigations. Some of the claims of supernatural occurrences around the property include tales of boards flying through the air, people saying that they have been chased up the stairs and have heard loud thumps. There have been shadows spotted near windows. There have also been reports of an apparition of a child who is thought to be that of Elva Skinner, a child who died in a fire in the home in the 1880s. There is also said to be the spirit of Joe Bluxom, a former elderly groundskeeper who is said to be seen, who started to be seen after he was killed on his way home after being struck by a train. Some people have reported being touched by an unseen hand while on the property. Others have reported seeing the apparition of a doctor who is believed to have jumped from a window in the building. There have also been reports of a male apparition wearing a top hat. A fancy man.
That's a whole thing.
Yeah,
man with the hat.
The hat man.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's why I don't take Benadryl anymore. As with most of our haunted locations, it has been featured on our favorite show, Ghost Adventures.
Ugh. I need the story behind that's why I don't take Benadryl anymore.
You know, the hat man comes and gives you money, and then you can't take it anymore because then you owe him money. You have a debt to the hat man.
What?
Haven't you ever heard that before?
No.
Yeah, I owe the hat man money, so I can't take no Benadryl.
I'm so confused right now.
Somebody will know what I'm talking about. Yeah,
that's a thing.
That's a thing. Let me.
I don't know.
I played a sound effect. Our listeners will hear it. The Hat Man.
It's a meme?
Yeah. I can't take Benadryl because I owe the Hat Man money and I don't want to see him.
Okay. Anyway.
I'm telling you, Benadryl gets you messed up.
I have never had that experience.
Well, I used to have a pretty bad problem with it.
True.
I only take it when necessary now.
I will tell you this. Medications.
I don't know how I'm alive. If I'm being totally honest. Because used to, I would take that bottle of Benadryl and just dump it in my hand and take a handful and go to sleep.
I don't know how you breathe.
Yeah, I don't either.
Medications like that don't generally give me like crazy dreams or anything. Like I think now, like coming off of anesthesia or some like high powered pain meds.
Yeah. I wouldn't say that like the Benadryl ever really gave me crazy dreams. Now, when I switched to like trazodone, I would have crazy dreams.
Well, like they just all make me think that I'm like Kevin Hart or something, making jokes, cracking jokes to everybody. I think I'm just a funny motherfucker.
That's what happens when I take a garden gummy. That's what speaking of almost cussing, me and Danny were talking about Ziggy. I got to say this on the podcast. I got to cement it in history. So we were talking about Ziggy the other night because he peed on he had been using the rug in the guest bedroom as his personal litter box, and I've spent a whole week trying to get the smell out of that room. The rug's probably gonna have to be thrown away. Anyway, we're sitting there talking about it, and he said, let me open it again. That's because believe you me, I had to tell people. So, I said, I almost texted his previous owner and was like, you know what? Never mind. Come get him. And then Danny goes, well, when he pissed, and I stopped and I looked and I said, wait a minute, what did you say? Because he kept trying to breeze on past it like he didn't say nothing. And then he tried to act like he didn't finish the word.
Well, this is
you still said piss.
Daniel Daniel
does not swear.
Yes.
He does not say any bad words. He doesn't say pissed. He doesn't say anything like that. I think it's precious. It is so innocent. It is so cute. But so he says this, and I had taken a garden gummy, of course. In all caps, text my sister, Danny said pissed. Next message, this is not a drill. Next message, this is the closest I've ever come to hearing him say a bad word. My sister returns almost immediately, which is very unusual for her. In all caps, what? Why did he say it? And then I told her the story about Ziggy. But yeah, he done tried to breeze right past it like he didn't say nothing. Yeah. And I'm like, rewind. We're not going to just breeze right on past that like you, yeah.
Anyway, so no, medications like that don't do me like that, but I will tell you. So when I had all that going on with my neck, they had given me like high-powered ibuprofen.
That stuff makes my stomach hurt.
And then like I've gotten to the point where like I have to go long periods of time without taking ibuprofen, or I have to take 3 to 4 for it to do anything.
Yeah.
Anyway, Tylenol doesn't work for me at all in any capacity.
Yeah.
But anyway, so I had gone to like urgent care for it. I had gone to my PCP. I had done everything I knew to do. And then I got referred to an orthopedic doctor. And so I went to the orthopedic doctor, and she had, because it was bad. It was so bad. My neck was killing me all the way down to my fingertips and my right arm. It was awful. So I had a slip disc in my neck, and it was pinching all those nerves and whatnot.
Yeah.
So she prescribed me gabapentin. I knew nothing about gabapentin. I thought it was just something along the lines of a run-of-the-mill muscle relaxer. No big deal. Girl, let me tell you, I took one.
Yeah.
And then laid in bed.
Did the Hat Man visit you?
No.
No, I will say, like, you got to be careful with gabapentin because it can cause memory issues.
Well, I laid in bed and, like, did some research on it because I didn't know a whole lot about it. And I'm like, I probably should have done this before I took this, but I'm going to look at it. And then, like, started seeing
like something I would do.
Right. Well, and then I'm like, I'm never taking another one of these just because of what I've read, because it is highly habit forming.
Yeah.
It's got so many negative things.
Yeah, it can cause like neurological disorders. Yeah. It's
so
not.
I take it. I'm doing all this research. I'm laying in bed. And then like, I was on a whole nother planet.
Yeah.
And I have never had anything affect me like that. Now, it was like...
That's what I had to give my cat.
I could see colors. Like, I mean, you can see colors, but you know what I mean? Like, auras.
Yeah.
It was insane. And then I was like, I'm going to sleep. So I went to sleep before it got too crazy. Yeah. But if I did dream, I don't remember it.
That's literally what I had to give Tom to take him to the vet.
I've seen that, like, because I was looking for something that we could do for Ellie at home so that I can trim her nails at home. Because since we've had her, we got her in March. Since we've had her, I have only been able to trim her nails at home. Well, let me rephrase that. TJ has only been able to trim her nails at home once. And then I had to send her with my niece.
Yeah.
At a dog grooming place.
Is she very...
She's not gonna bite, but she gonna fight.
Yeah.
She gonna wrestle trying to get loose, and she's very strong.
Dogs just like that? I say that like I don't have two cats who will absolutely have an absolute meltdown. Willow will growl at me.
Well, you can't hold... Ellie is very strong.
Yeah. She's also freaking huge.
That's the Great Dane in her.
I was gonna say, now that like I know that she has Great Dane in her,
yeah,
you look at her and you're like, yeah,
you can see it.
Yeah.
But she's Great Dane Pit Bull, and that Pit Bull strength is very, very real.
Yeah.
She's just, she'll jerk away from you. So I was looking at stuff and I saw that you could give them gabapentin, but I was like, I am not doing that to her.
Yeah.
Also saw that you can give them Benadryl. And I was like, I don't know how I feel about that.
They just metabolize it differently than we do. Yeah.
But I don't know. I'm going to keep sending her with my niece to get them done, because she said she fought her on one paw, and then after that was just like, if I have to. Because, she works at a grooming place, so they've got ways of making her sit still.
Yeah.
And, like, she had fun. She played with other dogs and had a great time while she was there. Loki missed her all day long.
Aww.
And then got so excited when she got there that he peed on her.
Ooh.
Like, he didn't, like, lift his leg and pee on her. Like,
Can you imagine?
Well, my niece was, like, picking him up because she was going to take him outside and squeeze his butt.
Yeah.
His anal glands. And when she went to pick him up, he peed everywhere because he was so excited, and it just happened to land on Ellie.
Nice.
So Ellie had just gotten a bath, so I had to give her a waterless bath immediately.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's my gabapentin story. I'll never take another one. I am heavily, like, if I'm having a surgery and, like, in the hospital where I'm in a safe space,
yeah,
I will allow myself to take, like,
something like that.
Would that, like, narcotics or something like that? But, like, when I'm at home,
you would have to show your ID for at the pharmacy.
When I'm home, I'm not doing it. Like, I just can't. They try to prescribe them to me, and I'm like, no, thank you. Just give me high-powered ibuprofen, please.
Yeah.
Because all it does is make me sleep. It makes me so groggy. I can't function.
Yeah.
I don't know how people, like, doctors prescribe you stuff like that.
Willy-nilly.
Well, not necessarily just like you're going to be able to function on the day.
Yeah.
Like, oh yeah, you're going to have this back pain for a couple months, but, like, here's you some narcotics to make it feel better and go on about your day. Like, you're not going to be laying on bed while you're on it.
Right.
I don't know. Do people function on those? Can people function on those?
No, that's why the United States has one of the highest opioid addiction rates. It's insane. Anyway, I've got a nonprofit of the week.
Is it an opioid addiction situation?
No. I picked the Peoria Riverfront Museum. No. I've been to Peoria, but I haven't been to the museum. The only multidisciplinary museum of its kind in the nation, the Peoria Riverfront Museum uses art, science, history, and achievement to inspire confidence, lifelong learning, and talent. Since opening in 2012, the privately funded museum has provided more than 1 million experiences through major exhibitions, a permanent collection, interactive galleries, a dome planetarium, giant screen theater, and educational programming, including curricula-related student visits. The AAM-accredited, Smithsonian-affiliated, private, non-profit museum is supported by more than 4,000 members and donors. It is housed in a county-owned LEED Gold-certified building on a campus overlooking the Illinois River. The museum has been designated one of the 200 great places in Illinois by the American Institute of Architects. And the museum manages a permanent collection of 15,000 objects and organizes more than 20 self-curated and visiting exhibitions annually in 5 major galleries and 25 total display spaces. Special programs include a 40-foot dome planetarium, 194-seat giant movie screen movie theater, and an array of educational programming that includes museum classes, camps, lectures, tours, travel programs, digital and video content. The museum has more than 200 community and national program and content partners, including affiliation with the Smithsonian.
I like it.
So, should you be led to donate to this museum, I will leave a link for you to be able to do that.
I like it. Well, thanks for coming to another week.
Thank you for coming to our TED Talk.
This was your monthly installment of 50 States, which will continue on.
Yep. And then next is, yeah. That's right.
Yep.
Indiana. Man, that's probably going to be a boring episode. I bet there ain't nothing in Indiana. Yeah, there ain't nothing there. It's all flat. Yeah.
I'm sure I've been to Indiana more than once, but I drove to Indiana once, and it was like a year ago, like yesterday, or maybe today. I went to a funeral.
Yeah.
By myself.
Yeah.
And that was the longest, most boring drive home, or drive there ever.
I just got nervous about this episode recording.
Did it record?
It did, but I think when I plugged in my hard drive here at the end, I think it might have done something. I don't know. We'll find out.
Well, hope you guys don't hear this.
Yeah.
Anyway, so make sure that you're casting your social circles and following us on the Facebook,
Instagram,
the TikTok,
Twitter,
and emailing us at
@gmail.com.
Bye-bye.
Bye.